Hi everyone, and welcome to How Good's Footy in Asia, AFL Asia's official podcast. We're up to podcast 28, and it gives me wonderful pleasure this afternoon to introduce everyone to Simon Highfield, our AFL International Manager of Development. So, Simon, great to have you on board and joining us on our podcast. And how are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Matty. Look, how do they say in the radio business? It's long-time listener, first-time caller, something like that. But I tell you what, you two must be absolutely scraping the bottom of the barrel. We've got so many great characters in Asia, and you drag me out here to do this. But thanks, Matty. Appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
Let's be truthful here. It's been a long time coming because you've constantly put this off and put us on the back burner. But we've actually we've found an opportunity to get you on board, which is terrific. And a lot of the things that are happening in Asia, it's a prime opportune time to go through some of those, which we will throughout the podcast. But just more importantly, boys, how good is it to have footy back on our screens right across Australia and internationally, but also in Asia? It's been a long time coming. Been a drawn-out winter here with COVID, but just something magnificent to see on the screen is footy, and what a wonderful first round it was. Simon, how'd you find the first round before we go into a bit more detail later on?
Yeah, it was just good to have footy back, wasn't it? Quick takes. I mean, scoring seemed to be up. As a Swans fan, it was great to watch the Swannies get up in what I thought was probably one of the more exciting games of the round. Yep. But it was really hard. I mean, you look at the games that some people might have thought weren't going to be super exciting, and they were cracking games. You know, Freo get up by a point thanks to that save. Hawthorn looked okay. I mean, it was just a cracking round of footy, and like you said, good to have footy back on TV and give us something to watch over the weekend.
Yeah, it was a promising first round, and if you've got your membership, you'd be pretty happy with what you saw. I think everyone except for maybe Essendon and St Kilda, but we won't dig too deep just yet. Bill, we'll head over to you. How are you, Bill?
Yeah, not too bad. Like Simon, pretty happy.
Firstly, have you recovered from COVID? And secondly, how are you feeling after your 300-kilometre bike ride on Saturday?
Well, those questions kind of interlap a little bit. I'm not quite sure where everything stands. But I went to some... It's a bit funny, you know, you wonder how much of this COVID thing is because it's so prevalent and talked about so much. So I don't know whether I took... I tested positive the Saturday before. 7 days later, had to do this bike ride. We'd already delayed once due to COVID, so we had to go for it. And in the middle stages of that ride, I was very dark. I wasn't sure whether I was physically sick or like normally buggered, which is going to happen. My furthest ride previously was 100 Ks. So the 200 Ks beyond that are all kind of unknown. So whether COVID was an impact or whether it was just a very challenging ride, we got it done. That was the main thing. The sponsors, the donors that we got, we hit our target. We're putting more than 10 kids through school. It's got to be up to 12. Maybe we'll get to 13 by the end. So it's been me and Luke, the other kind of main organizer behind it, absolutely just so excited by the support we got. And that definitely made the back half a little bit easier. You know, just thinking this is great. A kid's going to pick up a school bag for the first time who wouldn't have otherwise because we're going through this. Just changes your perspective a little bit and you get through the day. So feeling good now, I think. A bit of a cough still, but I couldn't tell what was affecting me by the latter stages of that ride. But it's all over now, so very happy with that.
Fair effort, Billy.
Yeah, it is a brilliant effort, Bill. And congratulations to you and Luke Turner on your magnificent efforts. And more importantly,
thanks.
The end result, the outcomes are going to be 12 or 13 children up that weren't going to go to school. We're going to get that opportunity now, which is a brilliant outcome. Let's get back to business. Bill, I'm going to let you have the new rock, the new ball. You can steam in from the northern end and I'll pick things up as we move along.
Right. So, Simon, what we normally do to start one of these podcasts is go back as far back as you're willing to go. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and I guess your sporting exploits and your exposure to footy in the Newcastle area, and then how that sort of grew.
Yeah, I'll try. My long-term memory's pretty shot, but I'll give it a crack. I reckon I had a pretty standard, Australian childhood. Grew up in Newcastle, just south of Newcastle, on a little lake called Lake Macquarie, and me and my two brothers just used to, kick around in the backyard. We obviously lived in rugby league heartland, and that was probably our first exposure. We loved the Newcastle Knights. I think we played a little bit of soccer when we were about 6 years old. Obviously played a lot of cricket, and in the wake of the warning news recently, I was only talking to my little brother the other day how we used to go and go out in the backyard and play for an over, but then we used to run back inside and watch the over that Warney would bowl. But it was a really standard, I think, Australian upbringing. So as I mentioned, played rugby league quite a bit up until I was about 17, 18 years old, and suffered a pretty horrific broken leg, and didn't return to rugby league. And then I guess my first exposure to AFL was actually as an employee. So I was studying teaching at university. Obviously had a bit of a sports background through rugby league, and the AFL up in New South Wales were offering kind of development roles, to go into schools, to go into clubs and do, kind of school programs, a bit of talent, a bit of Auskick, things like that. So I just kind of got one of those roles, and I actually started working for the AFL before I ever played a game. And I figured it was probably had to do my due diligence and actually go and play the sport if I was out in the community preaching it. And picked up footy a little bit later at about 19, played with the Cardiff Hawks, Isaac Heaney's club. That's probably what we're most famous for. And then, ran around up there. The Swans used to come up a couple of times every year and play a NEAFL game up in Newcastle. So I had a bit of a kick and a catch. Very much struggled to get a kick and a catch in those games, but had a bit of a run around with them. And that was kind of my first introduction to footy. And then, kind of the rest, I guess, is history from there and carried me to where I am today. But I know you guys are probably going to want to fill in the gaps there, aren't you?
Certainly are. Just apologies to any of our listeners who are listening to this podcast. You can hear a bit of background music. It's not an ice cream truck. In Japan, the same sort of sound or the same sort of song they play is actually a garbage truck. So the rubbish truck's just around the corner, so it might get a little bit louder. So apologies in advance.
Mate. It's absolutely an ice cream truck. In about 5 minutes, you're going to duck down a screen and come back with a bit of
Whippy.
Yeah.
Old Mr. Whippy. So I do tell the kids that story from time to time. They've probably heard it more than I should have repeated. But let's just push on a little bit now. One of the most interesting thing is that you and I have in common. Is that right?
What's that?
You're back, Matty. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, apologies. One of the things that Simon and I have in common is that we're both chalkies. I've got 17 years teaching experience in the classroom, and Simon hasn't really set foot in the classroom. So you fast forwarded your teaching career and you did some volunteering over in the South Pacific, which led to some full-time employment with the AFL and managing and developing that South Pacific region. Can you give us a bit of an understanding as to how that all panned out?
Yeah, I think you've dealt me a bit short there, Matty. I taught in the classroom for about 2 years. But
did you really?
Yeah, but I still maintained my employment with the AFL through that time. So I still did a bit of coaching with the Swans Academy up in Newcastle and a bit of a few bits and pieces up there. But yeah, as you said, an opportunity with the Australian government popped up to go over to the Solomon Islands, and I was kind of teaching in Newcastle at the time and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I thought, there's a great opportunity to go overseas for 12 months and then come back and figure it all out. So yeah, as you said, moved over to the Solomon Islands and worked with AFL Solomon Islands for 12 months. And it was a great experience. They've got, at the peak, they were seeing a few thousand kids every year. So we have a team of development officers. We go out to schools, go out to communities and introduce footy in language to Solomon Islanders. And as most of the people that are probably listening to this are aware of the Muriks and kind of how hard-headed the Papua New Guineans are over the footy. The Solomon Islanders, they're cut from the same cloth. So they're real nuggety, really short, but absolutely fearless over the footy. So, yeah, that was a great experience. We just built the exposure and built the brand of AFL in the Solomon Islands through local funding opportunities, through local sponsorship. There was no investment from the AFL. It was just really hard work by passionate volunteers, both Australian expats and locals.
Yeah, so let's just push on. You did your service there, and obviously there's been opportunities that have come up with the AFL in a AFL South Pacific role. Can you explain the role itself and some of the countries that you manage through the South Pacific? Because obviously our involvement with the PNG Marooks is really important, but not many of our listeners would understand how much it's expanded into the South Pacific.
Yeah, that's right. So after the 12 months in the Solomon Islands concluded, another opportunity came up over in Fiji. So I moved from the Solomons over to Fiji and ended up, planning to be in Fiji for 12 months and then ended up staying there for 2 years. So I kind of always just was delaying the inevitable return to Australia. But then as my Fiji time was concluding and did some great stuff over there, obviously, as my Fiji time was concluding, a regional opportunity came up where I could move back to Australia and become the development coordinator for AFL South Pacific. So that role was working with a colleague of mine, and we managed football across 6 different countries in the South Pacific. So it was PNG, Fiji, Nauru, Vanuatu, Tonga, and the Solomon Islands. So for me, it was a no-brainer. It gave me an opportunity to come back to Australia, try and further my career, but continue doing what I was passionate about, which was growing the game internationally. And at the time, that was in the South Pacific. So it was really fortuitous. I'm not going to shy away from that. I think I got really lucky with the timing and how everything worked out, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I loved living in the Pacific, and then I loved being able to come back to Australia and then still impacting football across those Pacific countries and working with the great, staff and volunteers that are still managing those programs to this day.
Yeah, just before we head past back to Bill, we hear of the Balinese and some of our Filipino friends that some people are living on island time. What is it like living on island time? And if you could pick one of those countries where you could live for the rest of your life, which one would you live in?
It's a good question, but you make a good point. The Indonesians talk about Indonesian time and Vietnam time. I'll tell you what, it is an absolute fraction of what it is in the Pacific. If someone's talking about Fiji time or Solomon's time, it's any kind of Asian time times about 100, and that includes the school bells. You'd be going, you go to run a school program at 11 o'clock. All of a sudden, the school bell doesn't go till 11:30, so you and the staff are just napping under a palm tree in the schoolyard. So that's kind of how the timing worked, and it's kind of very much just go with the flow. If I could move back there, which is a good question, Matty. I love Port Vila, which is the capital of Vanuatu. They've got great restaurants. Obviously, there's a big French flavour there, so the beef and the restaurants there are great. The bars are great, and the port at Port Vila is really clean, so you can swim in the port right near the CBD. But I'd have to say, if I didn't have to work, didn't have to worry about money or anything, I'd probably go to some really isolated island in the Solomon Islands, right near a great fishing spot and near a wave, and I'd just retire there and just go fishing and surfing for the rest of my times, I think.
Sensational. Bill, front and square, hand pass to you.
Thanks, Matty. So before we jump into Asia, what would be your most memorable footy-related experience throughout the South Pacific role and experience?
I thought I told you, mate. My memory's shot. It's no good.
Yeah.
My most memorable moment.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be the most memorable, but something that'll be up there.
I just think more than anything, it was the ability to switch off and kind of go back to roots. I remember numerous times you'd go on these outreach trips where you'd obviously take your phone with you, but you'd have no phone reception, no electricity, no running water. I remember one in particular, it was in the Highlands up in Fiji, and I think we were there for about a week and a half with some other sports. So we'd go to this village, and there was basketball, there was AFL, there was rugby league, I think, as well. And a bunch of different staff would go up to this village, relocate up there for a week and a half and run a coaching course with just the community. And so you'd have a lot of different smaller villages come into this main village, which was still very small. But you'd just be up there for a week and a half talking to people, Talanoa, which was called. Then at night you'd sit around the carver bowl and have some carver and just eat well, talk, no running water, no electricity. You'd swim in the river, and it was kind of a really good way to kind of remember where you came from and remember how lucky you are, because these people are so happy, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, I'd say that would probably be the biggest thing I'd take away from it.
So
that and all the fishing. I mean, some of the fishing was insane, but let's not.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So tell us about how the Asia development manager role came across your kind of radar, what were your initial thoughts, and then how did the role kind of develop?
Yeah, so my contract with the South Pacific was coming to an end, and I saw the Asia piece as a really good opportunity. Obviously, everyone was aware of what AFL in Asia was doing. They've been made pretty good tracks in the preceding years before that role became available, and I just saw it as a really good challenge. Certainly didn't expect to have, I guess, such the strong community that did. I just thought it was going to be a really good challenge to kind of test myself in a different area, and I threw my hat in the ring, not really knowing what was going to happen, and I was really thankful to get the role. And then I guess nearly 3 years later, to be able to work with people like the both of you and the rest of the community across Asia, all the way from Pakistan all the way to Japan. It's been a really enjoyable couple of years. Certainly been challenging, particularly through COVID and whatever else we've been through the last 2 years. But yeah, that's the process that saw me have a jump at it. But I couldn't be more lucky, I guess, to be able to be in this position.
Bill, let's get a bit of insight here. Some of our listeners may be aware, but Simon and I were the last two standing for the job, and the better man got the job. So I've had the luxury of working closely with Simon with our triple AB, which is our AFL Asia Advisory Board. So I'm enjoying. He's driving the wheel, and I'm just in the front seat, and occasionally I'll go on the back seat. But no, it's been a magnificent journey. I feel sorry for Simon in the fact that he came on board, and his first adventure in the role was at the Asian Champs 2019. That was in his first 4 weeks. So he's new kid on the block. He rocks up at Asian Champs. He tries to hide in the corner a little bit, just soak it all up, and he did a good job at that. But I'll tell you what, you wouldn't have imagined that being the one and only time you've been able to get out into the community. And I guess it's been a real, what I'd say is your resilience during this time of COVID should be more congratulated across the region, because most people aren't aware that your position became questionable, whether it would exist beyond COVID. So it's been a real well done to you and your persistence and resilience during uncertain times, not only for yourself, but for our region as well. Let's just go to the AFL Asia Advisory Board. One of the things that we've done as a team is develop the Developments Grant program. Can you give our listeners a thorough understanding as to what's happening and how this is going to make impactfulness across the region and help grow the sport and provide their clubs with some funding that they never had before?
Yeah, no worries at all. So obviously, in the wake of COVID, we had a bit of a restructure and a re-budget. So an opportunity to launch this development grants program, which is a great initiative that we found was an opportunity to get funding into the hands of the clubs, but allow the clubs the structure to run those programs. So we at AFL Asia never wanted to come in and be the experts, because we knew that the Vietnam Swans, for example, were the experts of their market, and the Indonesia, AFL Indonesia were the experts of their market. So we never wanted to direct them how to do anything explicitly. But the funding is a great opportunity just to get more boots on the ground, more footies in kids' hands, and more programs running. So as you mentioned, Matty, we launched, it would have been about this time last year, and we got 8 great applicants to come on board, all with vastly different ideas at how they could improve, I guess, delivery of football at a community level, be that in schools, be that in clubland, be that in communities with orphanages, with charities, et cetera, et cetera. So, 12 months later, we've found that we were able to, bolster the football league in Guangdong. We've been able to, hire staff in Thailand and Cambodia so they can go out and run Cambo kick and Thai kick in schools in those centres. Indo kick in Indonesia is back up and running, and they're looking to launch in 3 different territories now instead of just the one. Just an absolute plethora of different ideas that we were able to fund, and we're excited to be able to say we're launching soon again for 2022 to go to another round of funding. So it's really exciting times. It's an opportunity, like I said, that we've never had before, to fund grassroots programs that the clubs can direct themselves, and that AFL Asia can sit back and trust, knowing that the clubs are doing their absolute utmost, particularly as volunteers, to run programs that are bolstering Australian football in foreign markets.
Yeah, terrific.
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it was. I think Bill was so consumed in your answer, you forgot to take the next hand pass. So, Bill, back over to you.
Yeah, I've got. Yeah, so as Maddie said, your one and only kind of trip to the continent since the role began was the 2019 champs, and I think at that stage we all thought, there'd be 4 or 5 different trips you'd make per year, getting to a couple of places, and obviously the champs year on year is a great way to bring everyone together and see where things are at. God, touch wood, but we might just be looking at another champs again. Can you give us an update on 2022 champs, how we're looking and where things are at?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks to both of you for reminding me that I'm stuck in Melbourne and still am and haven't been able to get on a plane in about 3 years. If anyone that knows me knows that I'm a travel bug and I love this role because I can travel, and it's been a bit of a bugbear of mine that I haven't been able to. So thanks for just, sticking that knife in and twisting it a little bit more, fellas. But yes, 2022 champs. So we're working with the Tigers at the moment. 2022 champs is definitely a go. Obviously, the transparency of the borders may change. But we're looking and working closely with the Tigers to get that event up and running in October of this year. So we understand that it will be different to other years. We understand that not everyone, may be able to make it, but we also understand that there is a huge appetite for some of the countries that can travel, that want to travel to champs. So we're doing everything we can. We're working with the Tigers closely to make sure that whether it's in Bangkok or Pattaya or whatever it ends up being, that there is an event put on in 2022 at this point right today. Obviously, we can't promise anything. If we've learned anything in 2 years, it's that we can't promise anything. But right at this moment, there will be a champs this year, and it'll be a great event, and hopefully signal a strong return to international footy in Asia, and one that's hopefully not paused again.
Wow, exciting.
It is very exciting. One thing I will mention in the intro, people might have seen on our Facebook page as we were previewing this podcast, and also in the intro, in the introduction of introducing your role, they might have heard the word AFL International Development Manager. Now, we didn't advertise the fact. I actually had that in my list of to-do jobs of actually developing an article and explaining it a little bit more. But let's do it on the podcast today. There's been some reshuffling with the AFL, and for those that may have a bit of a negative or a pessimistic sort of mindset, when you hear, we've been clumped together in this international role, well, I know the background information. I know that it's going to bring a lot more security, a lot more potential infrastructure and resources, and ability for us to have a bit more of a certain and secure agreement with the AFL moving forward. Can you give us an insight into your new role and basically how you're working around the clock? Well, maybe not so much you, but internationally it is,
Yeah, the only time zones I'm not working in at the moment is probably that part of the Pacific Ocean where there's no countries in the Northern Hemisphere. But yeah, that's right. So at the end of last year, I was fortunate enough to be offered a new role, or a kind of a restructured role, in that my day-to-day of footy in Asia doesn't change, which is great. It's what I'm passionate about. I love, our constituents, our participants, our coaches, our umpires, everyone in Asia. I love that. So that doesn't change. But I was kind of asked or requested to take on the oversight of a couple of other affiliates, as we call it, the AFL. So AFL Europe, AFL Canada, the US AFL, and AFL Middle East now sit under my kind of remit, and I'll work with those members in those markets to help them continue to deliver what they're delivering in those regions. So yeah, the phone doesn't enjoy much quiet time, given that I'm around the clock. But it's great. And as Matty said, there's lessons to be learned in some of those other markets. So I'm certainly busier from a personal perspective, I'd say. But at the same time, there's a lot of other things that those other markets are doing that I might be able to bring across to Asia. And likewise, the lessons that we learn in Asia, because I think Asia is probably one of, if not the most diverse international affiliate, in that we've got a lot of countries all doing a lot of different things. The lessons that we're learning in all those markets can also be transferable to other parts of the world, in Europe, North America, etc. So certainly busy, but again, very, very lucky and not shy to admit that. Yeah.
So back to a bit more focus on Asia again, but I just wanted to ask, in your now almost 3 years in the role, what would be your proudest moment, or the most impressive achievement that you've seen happen? And I'll give you 3 questions all at once, and then you can filter your way through them. And what have been the biggest challenges in the role? I think we know the sort of area that'll sit in. And how do you, and you can answer this with the AFL hat on, or you can answer it personally, how do you see the future of footy in Asia?
Yeah, good questions, Billy. And if I miss any of them or I go on a tangent, please just reel me back in. But I can certainly admit the biggest challenge has certainly been the last couple of years. As Maddie mentioned, 2020 was pretty tough. I was stood down for that calendar year pretty much. So I continued doing my role to support footy in Asia, but I wasn't having any of that compensated, and that's okay. But that was certainly a big challenge. Over that time, we lost a lot of commercial partners, as a lot of other leagues and clubs and organisations did. So we really kind of blipped through that year and kept afloat. But leading out of that, and then being able to launch the development grant program last year, I'd say that's probably the biggest achievement that we've been able to do. We've been able to see a huge return, both in investment, in interest, and in return to footy on the park. And that's probably been the most enlightening thing, is seeing that even though we did have 12, 18, 24 months where we weren't able to play football, the appetite and the drive is still there. And now we're seeing, we're reaping those rewards now, because people are coming back in droves, and being able to support with a little bit of funding and a little bit of, resourcing is really positive. The last question was about the future. Well, I reckon I'd normally be described as somewhat of either a realist or a pessimist, but every time I'm asked that question, I answer it very optimistically, because I feel like the future of footy in Asia is huge, and it comes back to what we've got in our strategic plan. Our vision is to be the biggest and best international affiliate in the world. We're not shy to admit that. We have, Asia as a continent, as a region, is the most populous. It's the most booming financially. So there's huge opportunities for us to continue growing the game in those markets, be that through broadcast, be that through participation, be that through revenue, whatever it might be. The way I see the future of footy in Asia, probably in the next, short to medium term, say 3 to 5 years, is we've got an office somewhere up there. We've got multiple staff supporting the development of footy in Asia, be that in the media and comms space, be that in the development space, getting coaches and umpires to go fly around the region and upskill and train and build the capacity of our constituents, and continue building that participation base. I think, our best year, Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but our best year was just shy of 15,000 participants, and that was back in 2019. And I have every confidence with, the continuation of the development grants program, the continuation of domestic footy, that number is only going to grow and grow and grow. And we have every confidence that's going to happen. And any way that AFL Asia can continue supporting that, we will do with the advisory board's help. We're not ashamed to admit that we sit here in Melbourne or in Osaka or wherever else, but it's the clubs that are on the ground that are the ones doing the work. And we're going to continue supporting, people like you, Billy, and the Swannies and the Tigers and whoever else it is. We're going to continue supporting those entities grow the game, because you're growing it on our behalf, and we're not shy to admit that. Very, very optimistic about the future of footy in Asia. Let's just hope that little COVID thing decides to go away once and for all, the borders open up, and we can get back to kicking some footies.
Yeah, well said. And just further to your note, if there was any football played in India last year, we would have actually given that 15,000 participant record a real nudge, and probably gone above that, which is absolutely amazing given the COVID pandemic we've been facing. So, for those that are interested in a strategic plan, our 5-year plan, we're aiming to get, I think it's 30,000 participants, which would really nudge us right up into the upper echelon of participants internationally. Let's take things back to a less serious note now. We've had Simon under the grill. He's lost a little bit of hair during the podcast. We'll ease the burden on him. And don't worry, I've collected all of it. True.
I
just had to give I had to give a farewell speech today in Japanese to the Oyodo Chugako, which is junior high school in Japanese today. And I amazed myself how much Japanese I got, but then the principal started waffling on in Japanese. And he's going about your beard, and I don't know whether he thought it was good or bad or ugly, but he let me know about it. But yeah, let's go back to round one of the AFL. Magnificent opening round, superb fixturing by the AFL. I'm just going to go through three of my biggest takes, and it's a little bit sectional. So I'll go through. I thought this is the best 5 debutants of any opening round of an AFL season.
True. And
the reason is Nick Dacos, pick 4, father-son, 27 disposals, had it on a platter. He's going to be hard to beat in this year's Rising Star Award with NAB, well sponsored by NAB and then Rising Star, and they do a lot of things for development with the AFL. So, yeah, he's going to be very hard to knock off. He was on target at one stage of breaking the record amount of possessions in a debut game, which was 39. But he will certainly do that during his debut season at some stage, particularly if he gets more midfield time. And I think he's probably taken a few possessions off Jack Crisp, who's on a very tender look at the moment in my super coach team.
Yeah.
And number two, Jason Horne-Francis, pick 1. Only had the 13 disposals, but was running at 83%. I did watch the first quarter, and it's probably one of the best debut quarters I've seen, impact-wise, per possession by a first-year debut rookie player. And he's all class. He just makes something out of nothing. It's a tap on. It's a tackle. He's just got really strong footy now. Number 3, Josh Rochelli, pick 6, 5 goals and almost won the game off his own boot. He's a mega star and a cult figure already with the Crows faithful. If he doesn't get the goal of the year, I'm sure he'll get the goal celebration of the year. He was absolutely magnificent and got the Crows back into the game. Nick Martin, unknown to anyone that was outside of the Essendon Footy Club going into round 1. He was a pre-season supplemental selection period top-up player that only got on Essendon's list on March 8th, which was the deadline day for the SSP. 5 goals, 27 disposals and 10 marks. And he was awarded the round 1 nomination for the NAB Rising Star. Unfortunately, he's out this week with the code of protocols. So what a going from up here to down here real quick. The number 5 for my debutants was Jack Hayes from St Kilda. There's another SSP from my footy club, Wood of West Torrens Eagles. People aren't aware of his resume. He's obviously back-to-back premiers with the Wood of West Torrens Eagles. He won the Jack Odie medal for the best on ground in the grand final, which is a magnificent effort for a big man. But he's also captain of the SA State team last year. Kicked 3 goals and had 10 marks, and most of those were contested marks. He's also from the BSR Tigers in the Northeastern League in South Australia. So that's Brinkworth, Spalding, and Red Hill. Now, if you don't know anyone from that area, they have the biggest hands and the strongest handshakes in South Australia. So he's absolutely huge. It's only 194 centimetres. He's a real undersized ruckman pinch hitter in the ruck, but power forward as well. He punches above his weight. Now, my number 2 for my biggest takes from round 1, the 2 most impressive teams were Geelong and Carlton. Geelong is a lock for top 4, and Carlton will play finals despite losing this week because of obvious COVID reasons with Michael Voss out. Cats fast, the ball movement was a highlight for them, and it was refreshing and will serve them well. But also Tyson Stengel, absolutely magnificent and a reward for investment for the Cats who took him as a delisted free agent. And Carlton, the hype is real, ladies and gentlemen. The hype is real. Look, since social media really lit up, this is the first time that the Carlton faithful have had anything to be excited about. So
it's the first time since last year, Matty.
No, this hype is actually genuine. And I know that you're in the pessimistic club with Kane Collins. You can sit there, but it is real. I've never taken them seriously until now, Bill. And the thing that they added was a team defence, which is really tough, desperate and unrelenting. Yep. And there's many feel-good stories brewing, like Doherty, who had that inspirational goal. That was a real highlight. Now, this one, Bill, might surprise you. My third and final take is how important contested football is to the success of the Port Adelaide Football Club. Here's your big G stat for the day. Port Adelaide has won 30 of the past 31 games when they've won the contested ball possession count. Last Saturday night, they had the game on toast, but Alia dropped that mark. There was a kick inside 50, and they turned it over, and Brisbane went down and kicked the goal the other end with Joe Dano, who kicked his final of his 4th goals. But by the way, Port Adelaide lost the contested possession count by 1. So that is my Big G round 1 AFL season takes. Does anyone have any takes? Bill, anything from you?
Touching on all, though, your takes are fantastic, Matty, and I think they sum up some pretty big areas. Do you think AFL list managers have gone and got up the waffle and Sandful, best and fairest top 3 of every team in the league from last year, and have just now pinned it up on the wall? Because the fact that Nick Martin and Hayes got through like that, they were anybody's to take, right? Every club it's a bit of a Tom Brady type story. Every club had turned them down, and they come out and look like, they're changing the face of their clubs, so to speak. So how many of these have been overlooked, do you think? Everybody's so focused on the draft. What's it going to mean for the league going forward?
Yeah, you think about pre-COVID, Tim Kelly was the prime example.
Yeah.
But now that COVID has rocked up, and
Tom Stewart.
Tom Stewart. It's become more of a reality now.
Yeah.
In this COVID world, that every club has their top-up players. So they do have the best and fairest from all of these mature age players and people that have been in the system for 4 or 5 years that have had a bit of a doubt or a bit of a knock on their ability. That there's also those hidden talents, and I think you're seeing that come to the fray. And they'll definitely make a lot of debuts moving forward as we get into the season, and whether some of those players get reinfected or infected for the first time. So it's,
I also don't discount the fact as well that the kids haven't been playing. So the draft, I wouldn't say the draft is compromised, but we don't know what we're getting as much at the moment. So going back to those proven talents like the Hayes and the Martins of the world might be maybe what we see in the first little bit of this year before the kids get a bit more of a go. Through training and maybe through some early games. I think that might be playing a part in it as well. But
yeah, I agree. And what happens generally is the top 30 are givens in the AFL draft, and then the next 30 or beyond on the rookie listed players, they're a little bit harder to judge and a bit more hit and miss. And I think that's the percentages that they work on, as the amount of games that get given or are played from the top 30 compared to the next 30 and the rest on the rung. Let's move along to round 2, and don't we have some belters coming up? And it kicks off tonight between the Western Bulldogs and Carlton. This game is a real interesting one. I don't know if coach can have so much impact, but if Vossi was actually coaching tonight, I would have no hesitation in picking Carlton. And for that reason alone, Ash Hansen is probably one of the best senior assistant coaches in the AFL, and he'll take the reins tonight. But I can just see the Western Bulldogs have had a bit of a can lit under them, and they've copped a bit of a rocket through the media, and obviously their coaches as well, Bevo.
Yep.
But I'm actually going to tip the Western Bulldogs by 17 points. Bill, we'll get your tip first.
As it stands, my tip is on the Dogs, and it's 11 points. I was pretty unimpressed by them last week, but I do think I think Bevo sat them down and said, right, boys, you were mud, but I've taken the fall for you. You guys now need to, you show up this week. It doesn't matter. It's all happened. I also think you can call me a pessimist, but tonight we find out about Carlton. It's really hard to know where Richmond are at. They fell away very badly. Once Prestia went out of that game, they just didn't have anything through the middle. They tried to keep Dusty forward, but that took all their grunt out. So I don't think Carlton beat a top 8 team as it stood last weekend, Thursday that was. So we'll find out a lot about both teams. I think the Bulldogs now, they bring Ugle-Hagan in, and I think they needed to, because Norton runs around like a headless chook, jumps at everything and does a great job. But Waitman's, I think he's one of the worst players in the AFL. If the umpires aren't giving him his kicks, then he doesn't get them. Where was he last weekend? So I'm not sure about the Bulldogs. I'm not sure about Carlton. Currently, I tip the Bulldogs basically because I assume there's a reason that all the bookmakers are saying they're favourites. But we'll find out in a few hours.
Now, for those of you unaware, AFL Asia has its own official tipping competition at the moment. So, Simon, you're amongst the 84 players I think we have on board. Who's your tip for the Carlton Western Bulldogs Thursday night fixture?
Again, you're choosing to throw me under the bus here, Matty, because off air we were just talking about how I didn't know who I was going to pick.
Yeah.
Look, I can somewhat buy into the talk that Carlton might be back. I think they were ultra impressive last week. I think Melbourne were also super impressive, so it's hard to get a measuring stick on where the doggies are at. But I agree with Billy. Norton obviously is he's a lock there. Bruce not being there and Shaki not offering much last week might hurt. So bringing Jamara back is a good move. I'd probably pick the Bulldogs. I need to think it through. I've still got a couple of hours. I'll probably pick the Bulldogs by a few, but I could be a late swing and go Carlton as well. I'm not sold. I don't know yet. If anyone's got any tips, flick them to me.
Yeah, there is a Japanese word called multi-nai, and that means waste. And I think the Western Bulldogs have wasted Jamara Ugle-Hagan. He hasn't been given the games. I know he's had to earn them, but there's some obvious reasons why he's not in the team, and I think they're just wasting a top-end talent.
What are the obvious reasons? He's looked good when I saw him. He's got poise. He goes back and kicks his goals, which is something a lot of key forwards don't do. What are the obvious reasons? I think his coach has his favourites, and
could be. Now, tomorrow night, we head over to the SCG. We have the Sydney Swans taking on the Geelong Footy Club. The Swannies were absolutely superb last week, and the Cats were the most impressive team in the AFL last weekend. This is going to be an absolute blockbuster. Going to be a rain fest. It's going to be very wet, slippery conditions. I think if any team is going to win, they can win by kicking 10 goals. And I'm picking the Swans in an absolute nail-biter. It could be under a goal. Anyone's game, though. Geelong are red hot. They play well in the wet as well. So I'm going to start with Simon. Simon, this is your footy club. Where do you see things sitting?
Yeah, it's a good question, Matty. I think Geelong were impressive last week. I think I'll probably tip Geelong to manage my expectations, because if the Swans lose, I get the tip and vice versa. But it's interesting you say, Matty, if you're tipping the winning team to kick 10 goals, and if that's Sydney, how many of those 10 does Buddy kick?
Not 4.
Not 4.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, interesting. Billy, what do you think?
yeah, I think that gets to the week after, which is, I think, Bulldogs, and perhaps the week beyond that. I actually think the Swans are... Buddy's done this throughout his career too. When all eyes go to Buddy, he quite often grabs the best defensive player in the opposition and takes them on a merry dance off over there somewhere. So I would not be surprised if for a couple of weeks you keep seeing, the Parkers, the Heenies. I don't know, is Papley coming back, or was he even playing last week? But I wouldn't be surprised if those guys kick bags for a few more weeks while the opposition are looking this way. But I don't think Geelong do that. I think Geelong... I can't pick this game either. I don't think he gets the 1,000, especially if it's raining. Yeah, I don't know why. Geelong were the most impressive team of last round, and yet they're not favourites for their second round 2 game. So it's funny.
It's the SCG factor. I think a lot of money, unnecessary money, is on Sydney at the moment. But
it's not that different to Cardinia Park, is it?
We won't gamble. We'll gamble responsibly if you're having one. But let's move along to the next game. Collingwood and the Crows. Saturday night, traditional time slot of 1:10, or it's actually 1:45 Melbourne time. Collingwood really impressive last week. I thought they showed a lot against a disappointing St Kilda. The Crows had their chances. They worked their way back into the game. I thought Freo had the Crows. They should have been up by 6 to 8 goals at half time, and poor kicking for goal probably let the Crows back in, despite a strong third quarter and a really good last quarter as well, but before Fremantle held out with a punch in the last minute. But it should have been a lot more of an easier win to Freo rather than 1 point. But MCG, I think at their home of football for Collingwood, I think Collingwood pretty easily. I think the Crows will find it tough to back up after a bone-bruising encounter against the Dockers. I'm going to go Collingwood by 4 or 5 snags. Bill, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree on that. I thought Collingwood looked okay. I think the Crows looked okay too, but they just won't have the cattle. And people will be a lot more aware of Rochelle and obviously Martin when he gets back for Essendon. So it's going to be hard for them to get those sort of performances again. Everybody's going to have that, front of mind. Don't let him get off the chain. So it'll be interesting to see their avenues to goal until Tex gets back. But yeah, I think Collingwood, because it's at the G. If that was at Adelaide, I wouldn't know how to tip it either.
Yep. Simon?
Another one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Adelaide showed a fair bit of grit to get back into that game. Like you said, they should have lost by a few, but the fact that they didn't shows a bit of backbone. But like both of you, I think at the G, Collingwood were pretty good last week. Let's not, refrain from that. So I think Collingwood will probably get the chocolates.
Yeah, good call. I think everyone's on board with the Collingwood train. Let's move along to the twilight game at the Marvel Stadium. Essendon taking on the Brisbane Lions. Essendon couldn't get any worse after last week. Brisbane held off Port, and they actually had backs against the wall, and they won the game when it was needed to be won, which is in the premiership quarter in the third. They got themselves back into the game. I think Brisbane will get this, and they'll do it pretty convincingly. I think Essendon are really struggling at the moment. They'll find it hard to get back, and if they drop this one, it's a long way to come back from. So not curtains, but it's difficult to come back from.
Nah, curtains.
Simon, for you?
Yeah, Brisbane by 20.
Yeah, Bill?
Brisbane, not by too many. I think Essendon have to show something. I feel like their season's on the line. Go 2-0 in a team that was going to be thereabouts for the 8. It's hard to drag yourself back. Stringer back in or not?
Yes, he's back in. Yep.
That'll give them a bit of body at least around the ball. Don't know how fit he is. You never do know.
Yeah. He's probably the only reason they got in the finals last year was off the back of some of his efforts. So
second half of the season,
Yeah. Port takes on Hawthorn at the Adelaide Oval in the first night game, or one of the two. Port Adelaide put up a really good performance last week. They could be disappointed they didn't come away with the win, but Brisbane were too strong in the end. Hawthorn got a surprise win. I think North Melbourne actually gave that one away, and it was one of those games where you got two teams in the stage of their demographic of development there. Neither side really knew how to win. And I think one of the things that I was really impressed with Hawthorn was Mitch Lewis up forward. He was just clunking them everywhere. And I heard Andy Otten, who's a development coach, is a senior assistant coach at the Box Hill Hawks. They talked about it at half-time, how North Melbourne got themselves back in the games because they weren't running the ball through Mitch Lewis. They went back through there and they got the rewards in the second half. So having said that, Port should be too strong. And I think it will tell us a pretty good story. They'll bounce back. And it's the Russell Ebert tribute game. So Port, look, they consider Russell Ebert as God in South Australia, Port Adelaide supporters. I think this is one of those statement games. We had statement games last week. I expect Port to come out really strong, anywhere between 8 and 12 goals in this one. Bill?
I think you were a bit harsh on Port earlier.
Maybe.
I think the injuries it's been a little bit overlooked. Everyone said, Brisbane pulled it out. Brisbane showed resilience. Who did Port have on the bench in the last 30 minutes? I was listening on the radio on my bike, so I didn't have full. But it sounded like, as players went down.
Yeah, Aliir, Trent McKenzie jarred his knee, but Aliir's had surgery. He's out. He's their most important player. So Sam Skinner had played 3 games in 4 years at Brisbane, had a really good season with South Adelaide last year. So he'll come in as a replacement and he should be really good. He's had 2 or 3 knee recons, but they're starting to get decimated with injuries, and you lose a key midfielder like Butters or Moke, and they also had Rosie. Who was like all their forward line, not one player for Port Adelaide got more than 10 possessions. So it's hard to kick a winning score when one of your forwards doesn't get off the chain. Simon, over to you. Port Adelaide and Hawthorn.
Well, if anyone knows Matty well, we all know that he doesn't go easy on Port Adelaide. But yeah, I think Port Adelaide will be too good. But having said that, Hawthorn were pretty impressive last week. I know they were versing North, who people aren't, scrubbing up to be much this year. But I thought the kids were good. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the youngest Hawthorn side that's taken the paddock in about since Alistair Clarkson's
Since Clarko's first game,
yeah. So you can't discount that. But yeah, I do think Port will be too good. And if we're moving on to the next game as well, I'm taking the lead here. I think Billy's D's are probably going to do over the Suns.
Danger game, but yeah.
Having said that, the Suns also were pretty impressive. They, they did take on a pretty understrength Eagles team last week. But it was their first win in Perth, I think, against either of the West Coast.
First against West Coast.
Oh, first against West Coast, yeah. But no, I do think the D's will be too good for the Suns. But I'm not expecting it to be an absolute whitewash. I think the Suns will show a bit of grit, but I think the D's will be too good.
It's definitely not a top four billing like it says in the fourth versus second, but yeah, you'd expect Melbourne to get the chocolates up there. North Melbourne and the West Coast Eagles. This is a bottom four clash at Marvel. First game on Sunday. I'm actually going to go with North Melbourne. I thought they did enough to suggest that they're on the improve. And West Coast, if they had this game at home, I'd have to tip them. But it's just a matter of a home side advantage for me. I'm going to go North Melbourne. Not with any conviction either way. Simon?
I got West Coast, I think. I think they get back Tim Kelly, they get back Liam Ryan, they get back a couple of others. I'm not as – I know people have got West Coast down in the dumps this year. I still think they've got enough talent at the club. They just got to get on the park. So if they can get lucky in the first half and then regain some talent in the second half, they should show a bit. But I do think they'll be too good for North.
Bill?
I think the West Coast top end is still first class. Even Kelly come back in, Gaff still on the wing, getting however many. Nick Nat in the ruck. JK up forward, and I heard they might be going to wheel out Darling again. Now that he's got his paper stamped. So I'll tip West Coast.
Yeah, it's going to be a 50-50 flip of the coin. Richmond versus the Giants at the G. The Sunday afternoon clash. Dusty Martin apparently maybe out is on mental health league as we speak. Giants were pretty good last week without winning. I'm going to
Giants are
go.
favourites.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Richmond.
At the G.
I'm still, just because it's at the G. Bill?
I'm going. No Prestia, no Dusty. If that's what it is, I might swing. At the moment, I'm on Richmond, and I'll stick there for now. But that's another one I might go and have a look at this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm with Bill. I think I would have tipped Richmond, but without Dusty, might swing things. And the Giants were pretty impressive last week. I watched that game, and they run deep, they bat deep through the midfield. They got to kick a score, and Himmelberg showed a bit. So I think the Giants will be okay, and I'm tipping them in an upset. I know someone said they might be the favourites, but I think they're still the underdogs in this game. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Final game of round 2 of the Toyota AFL season is Fremantle Dockers versus St Kilda over at Optus Oval in the last game. They seem to get these afternoon games over in the West on a Sunday. Fremantle were really good last week. Brayshaw was in scintillating form. St Kilda, not much to write home about, Yoshi. Not much. And,
put a fork in them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're cooked already. I'm actually going to go Freo by not the length of the Flemington Straight, but just write your own ticket for Freo. Bill?
Yeah, agreed. That's enough.
Simon?
Yeah, Freo should have kicked a cricket score last week.
That's right.
I don't know if they're getting anyone back, but they've still got a few out. But yeah, in Perth, I think they'll be too good.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's move along. We've got our yes and no section back. We'll say that's from Tribal Sport this week. All your Tribal Sport needs for your footy club. Go and get your sporting apparel through Tribal Sport, who are doing some massive things over at US AFL at the moment as well, just quietly. Simon, you're back under the grill. Will Buddy kick his 1,000th goal on Friday night?
I didn't know it was going to be raining, so I'm going to say no.
Will Ash Barty come out of retirement and play tennis again?
No.
Never ever.
Will Ash Barty come out of retirement and play cricket again?
No.
Will Ash Barty play golf?
Like professionally or?
Yeah, professionally.
Yes. Yeah, why not?
Will Ash Barty come out of retirement and play AFLW?
Yeah, let's pump that up. Yes, absolutely she will. Let's make some noise on here, boys. Get into her head. Yes, Ash, come play.
AFLW.
And will she play for Richmond?
No, Queensland girl through and through. She'll play for Brizzy or the Gold Coast, I'd say.
Actually, that'd be good if she plays for the Gold Coast. We're their biggest player since Gary Ablett. All right, let's move along with cricket. Has the Australia versus Pakistan Test series been exciting?
No.
Has it been boring?
At times, yeah, definitely.
Will the Australia versus Pakistan Test series end up in a 0-0 drawn series?
I'm going to say no. I think there's going to be a result. But if I've incriminated myself and the Australian Cricket Board come after me, I'm blaming you, Matt, because there's some tough questions.
Yeah, and look, I will give you
the PCB you'd worry about, not the ACB.
Well, my next point about that is that there hasn't been a drawn series, like 0-0 series, for 10 years. And that last one was New Zealand and England. And that would have been some rain-affected games, which you do get in March in New Zealand. I don't know why they play Test series in March, in February in New Zealand. All right, the Sydney Derby is a boring name for a game. Should the Sydney versus the GWS Giants game be officially renamed as the Battle of the Bridge?
I thought it already was.
No.
Wow, I've always known it to be the Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah.
Well, if it's not called that, then yeah, why not?
It's been marketed that way. A couple of food ones. Should beetroot go on a burger with the lot?
Yes.
Should pineapple go on a pizza with the lot?
No.
Will your mob, the Sydney Swans, finish in the top 4?
Yes.
Will Nick Dacos win the NAB Rising Star Award?
I'm going to say no, because I'm pretty sure he's the favourite, and I can't remember the last time a favourite won a Rising Star.
Cool, good response. Should the two grand finalists, the same question as Bill last week, should the two grand finalists play as a rematch as the season opener every week?
Yeah,
every year.
Love it. Yeah.
Are the Cats a top 4 lock?
No.
Will Essendon miss the finals this year?
Yes.
Yep.
Will Carlton play in the finals this year?
Yeah, let's get some blue noise happening. Why not?
Yeah. And the final one, does Took Miller go under the radar as a premium AFL midfielder?
No, I don't think he goes underrated. Didn't he make the All-Australian team last year?
Yeah. But if he was a Melbourne-based midfielder, I think he'd be going huge. Yeah, he'd be more highly regarded anyway. Let's put it that way.
I can see that.
Bill, the friendly fire round brought to you by Tribal Sport. We'll probably whip through these as quickly as we can because we're approaching the hour mark as we speak.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say, though, these questions are the toughest of the lot, and this is the part I've been least looking forward to because I know you throw in some curly ones. I have no idea.
So I've filtered down the friendly fire round a little bit. We've kept the 5 that, like you said, Simon, the toughest. We'll start out with some contentious stuff that hopefully fires up the next president's meeting. Who's your favourite president in AFL Asia?
Jesus. You know I can't answer that. They're all absolutely fantastic. No, in a serious note, and I think I did touch on this before, is that we work with really passionate and enthusiastic volunteers. And without those vols, we just don't have footy in Asia. So each and every president in Asia is doing an absolutely tremendous job. They're all working full time, so we can't forget about that. But no, none of them are annoying. I encourage all of them to message and call as often as often as they want to, and none of them are annoying, Bill. So you can quit your
weak. So that was my second question. Favorite president, most annoying president, and they've been let go through to the keeper.
You didn't expect any different, though. Come on, mate.
No, I just thought I'd try. Any 4 people on earth you can invite to a dinner, who would they be and why?
No, I didn't know you were going to ask this one. I'd have to say Anthony Kiedis from the Peppers.
Interesting.
I'd have to say Anthony Bourdain. Watching Parts Unknown at the moment, he's got such a great way of words, and just his take on the world and food, which I love, is really unique. Yep. I'd probably say Jeffrey Lurie, who's the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL. Yeah. I would like to understand how he made his mozza, but also how he manages to run an American football organization. Wow. And the last one, look, it'd have to be a sporting icon, wouldn't it? And I think I've listened to a lot of these now, and I know Michael Jordan gets thrown out there quite a bit, and he would be great. But you could take your pick. You got your Tiger Woods of the world, or even LeBron James in more recent times. Joel Embiid at the 76ers would be good to talk to as a Cameroonian. But when I was younger, when I first started watching American football, I really loved watching a quarterback, an African-American quarterback called Donovan McNabb, go about it. And he was kind of a bit ahead of his time with the way he used his legs as well as his arms. So I'd probably say him, just to ask him some questions on what it was like to be a professional African-American quarterback at a time where it wasn't very common.
Okay. And what would be 3 things that people don't know about you?
Mate. So you grill me for an hour, and then you ask me that.
That's right. Take all the easy stuff off the table.
3 things. I used to have really long hair down to the chest. Obviously, I can't grow that anymore, so I gave up on that dream. So I had really long hair. As I probably just alluded to, I'm a massive Philadelphia sports nut, so I love the Philly Eagles and the American football, but I'm also a big Phillies fan and a 76ers fan in the NBA. So I just love Philadelphia sports. Something else. Probably just that, particularly during my time in the Pacific, I'm a water baby. I grew up at the beach. So, love diving as well. So I've probably done over 100 scuba dives in my life. So let's go with that. Yep.
I'm actually going to skip the final question. It was the best footy tour, but we spoke about your most memorable times, which I think covered that pretty well. But just before I go back to you, Maddie, from the comment section today, we did have some people chip in that we didn't get to. Jared Landell's right at the start of the pod, obviously had a bit of involvement in Fiji and Vanuatu footy, so it's great to have him watching. Must have picked up on it from Facebook. And it's great to hear, as we ran through some of the other places getting up the junior development stuff, that the Philippines not only getting the adults back out after such a severe couple of years, but to see the kids getting out for a kick. And I've been watching their Facebook. It's really some incredible momentum happening there. So thanks, Colin, for jumping on. And then I assume this is a sly dig at myself as the co-host. I have decided on my tips, Tony, but there's plenty of moving parts in there. And we did get on to the 4 goals after that comment was added. So thanks to everyone who was watching today, but also throwing in some great opinions.
Thank you very much, Tony. I had a good chat with him yesterday, actually. And well done to Colin Crooks. Colin recently become a certified coach, which is focusing on junior development. So Colin's doing some amazing things. And I'll tell you what, the Philippines have come back hard after two-year hiatus of not being able to train outside and as a club. So we're really looking forward to their development and seeing back at Asian Champs.
Might jump in on that, Matty, just to reiterate. The guys in the Philippines, the way they've rebounded, I think they've got their first game between the Dingoes and the Eurekas in a couple of weeks. As you said, Colin Crooks jumped online with his coaching accreditation. I encourage everyone else across Asia, if you're out there and you want to get your coaching accredited to either help the senior or the junior or the Auskick centres get up and running, we encourage you at AFL Asia to go and do that. But just more broadly, that's just so good to have footy back in the region, isn't it? The Philippines have shown that 2 years of patience can lead to a return to footy, which is good to see. And, we're just excited to get the content, get the footies rolling and the legs kicking again. So good stuff, everyone.
Yeah, it's been an outstanding podcast, and apologies to, it was 2nd of April. There we go, first game.
Wow, great effort.
And one thing that they've been doing is building their Oz kick into their senior program, which is also happening with the Thailand Tigers as well. So they had theirs going last week, and we would have liked to have done more of a around the grounds, but we've run out of time today. Som, you've been an absolutely outstanding guest, one of the best we've had on board, not because you're the top brass in Asia, but because of your commitment and being able to give us some of your time today. It's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you and learning more about you, even though I speak to you most days of the week. I'm going to give you the 3. Bill, I'm going to give you the 1. I'm going to take the 2 and run with it today. But thank you to everyone who's been watching us right across Asia and internationally and back home in Australia. Thank you for joining us. And if you're going to watch it soon, jump on board to our Facebook socials. I don't know what's going on there, Bill. But jump on our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, which we haven't really got going up, and our LinkedIn. We want to get some more content with our LinkedIn. But if you'd like to get involved with AFL Asia as a sponsor, as a partner, jump on board with Simon and just message us on our Facebook. We'll give you the details and we can go from there. Been brilliant, Bill. Thank you, Simon. To our AFL Asia family, we'll catch up with you again soon. And bye for now.